All right, Nico, can you say, welcome to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies?
It's a happy episode. Happy babies.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren, your host. I'm also a prenatal and pediatric chiropractor here in San Diego at the Cap Wellness Center. And today's topic is nurturing the family. And my guest is Jackie Kelleher. She has a lot to share with us about nurturing the family from her own perspective, from her own learnings, from her own professional experience. But then also as an author, quite literally, she wrote a book on the subject, Nurturing the Family, a Doula's Guide to Supporting New Parents. I have it right here in my hand. The second edition of it is brand new off the presses. The first edition of her book was published way back in 2002, and she's going to share about that process of what's changed in these 18 years and what's included now in this edition. But more than just talking about chapters in a book, we're going to be talking about this subject, nurturing the family. And it's so important for new families starting out to have the support and guidance that they need to really launch them into a completely new phase of life. And she shares a lot of really great points, tactical, strategic things to do like in the first couple weeks and months of being a new parent and things to do, and we'll dive into those. But then also conceptually how to kind of think of starting your new family and to think of what you want your new family to be like, those conceptual kind of premises, those principles that you want to start your family off as a foundation, we're going to talk about as well, so that your whole family can be as healthy and happy as possible, because that's what this whole podcast is all about, right? So let me first have you listen to this quick message. I'll come back on. I'm going to share her information, kind of introduce her to you, and then we'll jump right on into our topic of nurturing the family. My online course, Connecting with Baby During Pregnancy, has been out for a while now, and I've been getting phenomenal feedback from you women who have been learning these prenatal bonding techniques, putting them to use, and having amazing results. The same kind of results that the women in the Rafi study were getting, where by doing these techniques throughout pregnancy, they were having less anxiety and pain during labor. They're needing less obstetrical interventions, including less C-sections. And then afterwards, the babies are sleeping better, which means you're sleeping better. And postpartum depression was less than 1% in the moms who did these techniques. So go over to my website at drjwarren.com/CWB and learn all about it. I think this course is amazing. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think it'll really help you have a healthier, happier, and more relaxed pregnancy and a gentler yet powerful birth. Jackie Kelleher has worked in the birth and early parenting field since 1995. Her career is a tapestry of family support: doula, lactation counselor, childbirth educator, community organizer, author, doula trainer, and early parenting support group facilitator are all ways that she's supported new families. The second edition of her book, Nurturing the Family, a Doula's Guide to Supporting New Families, is written for anyone wanting to better understand the needs of new families. Most importantly, she's the mother of 4 lovely humans, and you can learn more about her as well as her work at nurturingthedoula.com. So with no further ado, let me switch over to my conversation with Jackie. All right, Jackie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Great. Well, we're going to be talking about nurturing the family. Your book, and we'll talk about that in a second, but even more importantly, how to nurture this family. And we've done episodes in the past around doulas and postpartum care, but you have a really great take on this, and a great resource. So, and the more information we can have about how to support our families, the better, right? But with your book, like there's a difference that's come around. You had your first edition of the book was back in 2002. Second edition was just launched, so congratulations for
Thank
that.
you.
And it's a very different book compared to the first. I personally did not see the first version of it, but can you describe like what book you wrote in Nurturing the Family years ago, and then what differences there are and why there's differences in it?
Sure. Well, that first book is called Nurturing the Family. Oh my goodness. Nurturing
It's
the Family,
Nurturing the Family, the guide for
the
postpartum
guide for
doulas.
postpartum doulas. Yeah, I've separated from that one now. And
Mhm.
it was written for postpartum doulas. And it was an emerging profession. It was brand new. We had just through DONA, what's now DONA International, launched the first international doula certifying, doula certifying organization. And there was nothing that existed that was just for that. And so it was short. It was a lot of kind of bulleted lists, and it was for professional doulas. And that lasted for a long time. And then, 18 years later, everything's changed. My knowledge has changed. I've supported thousands of families since then, and I've trained thousands of doulas, and they've all in turn trained me with their knowledge and wisdom, and as have the families I've supported. And so I have a lot more to offer. Also, the profession of doulas is not new. It's well established and appreciated. And so it felt like time to redo it. And then the third thing that I really wanted to do was to have a guide that wasn't just for professional doulas. I wanted something that was accessible to anyone who is going to be supporting new families. So yes, definitely for postpartum doulas and birth doulas and childbirth educators, but also for other professionals like midwives and doctors and early interventionists and physical therapists or anyone else. And then kind of as or most importantly for new families. So whether it's for a new parent, whether it's a mother or their partner reading it thinking, oh, I can offer this to the people in my life
Mm.
and tell them, here, do this, these are the things that I need. Or grandparents can order it, and it's applicable to really anyone who's going to be supporting new families. And to me, a new family has the same needs as all families have. They're just new to us. So we are going to need the same things all through our parenting careers. And so it's a nice baseline to get started with making sure that we have adequate support from early on.
Right. And in that supportive aspect, you start off your book about the word doula being used as a verb rather than just the noun, just the position that might be how there. Describe the why you liked using that in doulaing a new parent and exactly what that means.
Well, if you live in my world where many people are doulas, then you doula people through all kinds of things. Sometimes you doula a friend through shoe shopping, and sometimes you doula a family member through a divorce. But essentially, it has come to mean a coming alongside role where
Mm.
we offer support non-judgmentally. We just offer our presence. So it's much more of an alongside role, not telling people what to do, not so much taking over as kind of letting people lead and showing them support while they make their own choices. And so whether that's in shoes or early parenting, everyone needs a doula all the time. So people more and more are using it just as a verb.
Right. And specifically, even my experience with new families that are using a postpartum doula, um, there's there's such a different level of support that can come from a professional rather than just from not just from, not to minimize it, but from a family member, because the postpartum doula, like one as a professional and two, like really holding that space, there is that non-judgmental support. What do you need? Rather than what can come from other family members is, oh, this is what you need and this is how you're going to get it. And then if it's
Yeah.
not responded to well, there's problems that come with either in-laws or your own mom or your own dad and the like. So having that non-judgmental space around, especially when a new family's navigating this whole new experience, is so key.
And it's just so rare, right? I
Mm.
mean, most of us, even the best of, grandparents and sisters and family members and best friends, we have our own agendas, we have our priorities, we have the things that we think that are the best choices and the right choices, and then there's the things that aren't those. So inherently they have to be the not best choices and the not right choices. And we tend to want to offer people, like you said, the things that we think they should have. And I think that that's one of the things when you study relationships and, communication skills, one of the biggest things we learn is that we can't offer people what we think they need or what we think they're deserving of. We need to offer them what they need, what they
Right.
decide that they need. And a professional doula has training in that. And some of the training is not just, what things might people need, but removing your own agenda, removing your own
Mm.
priorities, removing your own advocacy, and just meeting people where they are and respecting that I can't expect other people to make their choices based on my life experiences,
Right.
right? Like I had to have my growing experiences, and other people get to do it too. And me standing there telling them, don't do that, is the adult equivalent of my mother standing there saying, don't do that. Trust me, it's a bad idea. And who listened to that? We, we still touched the iron when it was hot, and people have to have their own experiences, and they're going to have their own experiences that led them there. So they might even have the same experience that I have and take it in a very different direction
Mhm.
because, it's all building upon a completely different set of foundational stones.
Right. And it's removing the attachment of not only like coming from your own experience and the knowledge that came from that, but like also all of the information that you have available as a postpartum doula or someone that's been through it. You might have this information that you want them to act on, but it's either they're not able to hear it yet because they haven't gotten to that spot yet. And that's why, like with your book, having so many different kind of seeds planted of what are things that would nurture this new family, of resources to take advantage of, to look into, allows a person that doesn't know what they don't know to start learning what they might want to bring in as far as support.
Absolutely. It's funny what you were just saying reminded me of when I used to teach childbirth classes, and you're talking about, pregnancy, and you're talking about labor, and everybody's kind of leaning in and their eyes are real wide and their pupils are dilated. And as soon as you start talking about after the babies were born, you would just kind of see everybody's eyes glaze over, and
Mm,
people would just kind of start looking all around. And it's because developmentally, emotionally, they're not in a place where they can take that in yet.
right.
Right. And I think that it's the same thing, just sort of in everyday life. Even those people who will hopefully be supporting them, their family members, their friends, they're also all excited about the belly getting bigger and the ultrasound pictures and the baby shower and, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And we're going to bring you food. And in our country, in here in the US, there's this general expectation that, and I address this in the book, that you're going to have your baby and then you're going to be kind of yourself with a baby.
Mm,
And there's this expectation of getting back to myself. When am I going to get back to myself? And back to myself might be my career or fitting into a certain pair of jeans or spending time doing things that I used to do before or spending time with my friends. And for me, it's a big thing to recognize that, you already are yourself. Like
mm,
in all of the stages that we go through outside of parenthood or parenting, we just continue to be ourselves. We're never going to go back to being that pre-parent person. We can go on to accomplish more and more. We can wear better and better jeans, all of those things. But it's going to be, as a new person. And I think that that's a hard thing for everyone to grasp. The friends are expecting you to kind of like have the baby and then like be yourself,
right.
like just like you do on a sitcom, right? Like the baby goes off and you only see them for like one little tiny minute part of the show, and then the rest of the time they just kind of vanish.
Right.
And the grandparents might feel that way, the parents themselves might have that sense. And it's a much bigger transition than most of us are anticipating.
Right. And I see that time and time again, like with the dads that I'm starting to do work with more and more, but even more so like growing out of like the moms is just that, is that in that like finding yourself again, there is a feeling of I'm a new person because I'm a mom, but say those goals of getting back into the jeans or doing whatever it seemed to be like your usual self did, it's still different. It's still like
It
it
is.
doesn't anchor, it doesn't, that goal and achieving that goal doesn't anchor you back into a sense of what, if you're looking for security or normalcy or whatever it is, you'd be like, right, I fit in the jeans, but like I'm still feeling awkward in this
Yeah,
transition.
yeah, absolutely.
I feel too that like with that transition into motherhood or into fatherhood as a new family, again, like the big challenge we've had at our own at the birth or the wellness center, the Cap Wellness Center, is that how do we talk about the postpartum period so that it's heard? Because of just what you said, like it's all about pregnancy and it's about the birth, and afterwards is afterwards. But then with the families I'm talking with after the fact, a lot of them are saying some version of, I'd wish I'd known ... Why didn't anybody tell me ... And sometimes we have told you, but it just isn't heard. So like, do you have any like tips for the women and the for the new parents listening around that of looking at the postpartum period?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the postpartum period means postpartum, after the birth, and it really is the rest of your lives.
Mm-hmm.
So the needs that you have as a family in terms of managing interpersonal relations, because with a new person comes new relationships, right? So forming a relationship with a new person, reforming a relationship if the birthing parent has a partner, then that becomes a new relationship. If there are older children, then those are new relationships. So there's a lot going on, and those relationships are going to need tending, and those people are going to need care for the rest of their time together growing up as a family. So the way that I like to think of postpartum is kind of like laying down the framework for how we would like our family to go. Like, what do we want that to look like? How do we want to treat each other? How do we treat people in our family? If you want to treat people kindly and generously, which I think are great goals, then that starts at the beginning. And what does that look like with a new baby? Well, it looks like um, opportunities for rest, opportunities for self exploration, opportunities for relationship building. So lots of time together between the parents and that new baby, and the parents and older children. I think that that's one of the things that I really want to make sure that people understand, that is kind of like the beginning of the rest of your lives together.
Hmm.
And you're just laying down a framework, and think about, what's important to you as a family, and whatever it is, it'll be as or more important in those early weeks and months as it is in all the times that follow. So what kind of things do people need? People need food. One of the big things that I tell people is that when you have a new baby, your your definition of a meal needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
As a doula, there have been just countless times where I'd have arrived at people's homes 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'll say to the mom, "What have you eaten so far today?" And the answer is nothing. Well, I haven't had time to eat. Well, of course,
Right.
of course you had time to eat, but that's because your definition of eating is like making eggs for breakfast and cleaning them up,
Right. And eating
making
them when
a
they're warm.
and sitting,
Yes.
with both hands, and
Right.
all of these things. And so little doulas come up with lots of tricks, like preparing foods, or ideally someone else does this, but if mom is by herself, she can do this. But preparing foods that can be eaten with one hand.
Yeah, I love that tip. I've never heard it just so perfectly said, of just one hand, like quartering sandwiches rather than having a
Quartering
sandwich, right?
sandwiches, yeah.
Like that whole sandwich with turkey that could fall out the side of it. You're like, yeah, I can't deal with that right now. But a
It's got
half
to
or
be,
a quartered is great advice.
kind bars and trail mix and cubed cheese and sliced carrots and sliced apples, and just whatever people eat, just, and having them, when people create their little, we talk about it being a nest, create nests in more than one place in the home. So maybe there's one in the bedroom and one in the main room where everybody visits, spends a lot of time, and maybe even if there's another floor of the house, one in another floor of the house. But and traditionally people always have, I remember for myself, I always had diapers and wipes, but what I didn't have was, oh, I don't know, something to put the soiled diaper into.
Right.
and a change of clothes for the baby when they had a blowout, and
Yeah.
a change of clothes for myself for when they had a blowout. And I certainly didn't have snacks in there. And I certainly didn't have bottles of water in there. And so, like, really creating these little nests is something that support people can do.
Right.
It's something that you don't have to be there all day, every day. You could be done, a couple times a week. And it makes a huge difference. And
Yeah.
then I always tell moms, especially if they're nursing, but it really doesn't matter if they're nursing or not. Every time the baby eats, everyone eats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
That's a great
breastfed
advice as well.
babies should nurse, 10 to 12 times a day on average. And that means that 10 to 12 times a day, mom should be eating. And if
Mm.
her partner's there, her partner should be eating. And if they're older children will be eating. And that keeps everybody's sugar levels more constant. So you have less breakdowns. So no, maybe there's one sit down meal a day that the neighbors brought over, the lasagna.
Yeah.
Generally, people bring so many lasagnas that eventually you move into like rating the lasagnas,
And then never wanting to have lasagna ever
never
again.
wanting to have lasagna or like
until you have
roasted
another
chickens.
baby.
But yeah, so there are things that are very basic, like creating these nests and food that you can eat with one hand that will take people far.
Right. I mean, the nests idea too, I found really powerful because I know when my son was born, it was just as you said, there was one main place where everything was. And so we tended to hover around there because that's where everything was. But then there was that feeling of like, oh God, I got to go upstairs and go get the ... right? That
Right.
practically speaking could have made a huge difference. Somebody had told us to have 2 diaper bags and have one that was when you come back in gets put aside and gets restocked at some point, but then another one's already there in stock, which was great advice. But that was just going out in and out of the house, like thinking of being in the house of if you've got multiple levels or multiple areas. I think that's such great advice.
Another thing that really comes to mind when you mention that, because, why do I think it's so important for mothers specifically to, be pretty stationary in those early weeks? And the thing is that we know that that's when we do a lot of our recovery, right? From our birth, we spent 9 months having our body change, and it takes at least that long, if not years, for it to kind of go back to a pre-pregnant state. And so if we're hopping up and down the stairs all the time, it doesn't have the opportunity for that to happen.
Right.
And what's kind of been interesting for me to learn as I've aged is that while you may feel fine, I had my first child, I was 23 years old. I could jump up, I was, you could skip all over the place and you feel fine. But what you don't understand is that 50-year-old you and 70-year-old you, they're in there too. And their wellness is contingent upon how you treat them during that postpartum period. If you don't, let's say you have a cesarean and you're running up and down the stairs and all that stuff, or you have a vaginal birth and you're running up and down the stairs and you feel fine, it's because your surface level healing has happened.
Yeah.
But that deeper healing, the 50-year-old healing, takes more time.
Right.
And if you skip it, you'll feel it. You won't
Yep.
feel it for decades, but
Right.
you'll feel it. And so convincing new parents that downtime and that being gentle with ourselves is an investment in ourselves
Right.
is something that has only come to me as I've gotten to that age. Right?
Yes.
I was like, wait a minute, 23-year-old me was not kind to 50-year-old me.
Right.
The problem is, I referenced this earlier, is that, it's the equivalent of someone's mom saying, don't touch that hot iron,
Right.
But at least, if moms can understand that you're talking about things like, your later continence and pain, scar tissue pain, those are all things that you can impact by just, giving yourself more time and being gentle. And the way you do that is with planning and care.
Right. Right. And I think like with having more information available to us now, like allows more to come up on the radar of in that postpartum period to have even just like working more closely with a lactation consultant was something that maybe if the wheels fell off, like you would find that. Whereas now, at least in our bubble here, that's pretty regular is like to have some sort of support in that way to make sure everything's going well. But the same way in a nurturing sense of instead of it being that first 4 weeks of, oh my gosh, like congratulations, and then call us if you need something.
Yeah.
Which I definitely was victim of as well. You know, it was like, well, they'll reach out when they need it. And then as a new parent myself, I'm just a general person. I don't ask for a lot of help, right? So that
Yeah.
circumstance did not serve me well because I had tons of people wanting to help. I just wasn't asking. And we did have people that just like rang the doorbell and like put food on the porch for us because they knew better. But a lot of us don't ask for help because we're supposed to do it ourselves. You know, that's our culture as well. And I think a lot of new parents like trying to go into that hole and do it all themselves, like later on down the line breeds just more fatigue, more depletion, more resentment, more problems that not only affect the relationship with the baby, but also the relationship with the partner as well.
Absolutely. That made me think of two things. One is a blog I wrote last year, I think, called "Don't Call Me Supermom,"
Okay.
and it's about exactly that. That I think that I'm a Type A personality. I like to think of myself as being competent, and I I I want to be competent, and I want to be a person who can get a lot of things done. But I have 4 children ranging in age. From my son is 29, my twin daughters are 27, and then I have a 12-year-old. So I have been active momming for 29 years.
Wow.
Not like I've been a mom for 29 years. I mean, I've had children growing up at home for 29 years. And if I've learned nothing else, it's that I'm just not that great, and that on any given day, I feel like I'm doing any number of things poorly. And as a mom, I don't try to make myself create these like perfect magical childhoods, and I do this, and I've got my job, and I'm fit, and I this, and I'm a perfect partner, and it's just not going to happen that way. And so that's what my blog don't call me supermom is about. Just like kind of like it's I don't want unrealistic expectations.
Right. And that
Right.
all
It's
too
too
often,
much.
especially like social media wise, where, it seems like everybody else on Instagram has got it all together. And I'm the one that's just scrolling through, suffering silently at 2 a.m, not being that and thinking everyone else is. And it's just not realistic.
And so damaging. It's
Damaging, right?
just so damaging to, our self-esteem and our expectations of ourselves. And honestly, as speaking as support people, since that's what we're talking about today, it's damaging of our expectations of the people we're supporting,
Hmm.
right? We're expecting them to look a certain way and act a certain way and get certain things done. And when we say let me know if you need anything, sometimes we really don't want them to need anything. We're
Mm.
really sufficiently overwhelmed with our own lives. And
Right.
because we're still postpartum too.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a systemic fail, that I think that the social media aspect of things is very, very dangerous. And as a, again, experienced mom, I have people in my life who I know the kind of inside story of what's going on in their families, and it's devastating.
Mm.
And they look picture perfect
Mm.
on Facebook,
Right.
and on Instagram and everything else, and literally picture perfect, right? And so, I kind of want to say to them, like, stop. You're hurting people. You're hurting yourself because you're holding yourself to this ideal of supermom.
Sure. Right. And like waiting to have an Instagrammable moment in parenting. And gosh, I haven't posted in 2 days. I haven't had anything Instagrammable, but like, cause that's real, it's so hard, especially like wanting to be good at what we're doing and wanting to get back to normal and wanting it to all be perfect. It just isn't. And at least for me, I'm a victim of this, but like the more I embrace that it's just not perfect and that's still okay, the better my day goes and the gentler I am on myself.
And others, I think, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And since we're, in postpartum, we are talking about like more than one person all interrelating. I think that, if we can be more gentle with ourselves, then we can be more gentle with each other.
Right. Well, I'll definitely make sure I'll get the blog post of the Don't Call Me Supermom, and I'll include it in the show notes. So people can visit. Like I'm excited to read that myself. But in our closing moments here, like what do you think is the major thing that is lacking that in today's families, that if you could just download it to them or give it to them in their brains or in their lives, that would make a huge difference? Where if it's not just one thing, but a couple of things?
I think one of the things I would say is that while this is a natural process, it doesn't always come naturally. And that we really need to be patient with ourselves and each other.
That's really well said. I love that. It's a natural process, but it doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, I'm sure those aren't my words. I'm sure I read them somewhere years ago, but it's always really appealed to me, that it, lots of things are natural, doesn't make them easy.
Right.
And what's the other thing I would say? More than anything else, every single thing, every bit of research that they do indicates that what people need is support.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of what we do as doulas is help to, I always say that my role is to work myself out of a job. And I make myself unnecessary.
Right.
And I do that by helping to figure out what you need and then figuring out how that will happen when I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
And one of the biggest parts of that is just setting up a social structure. Okay. And we know that parents who have friends who are also new parents have less depression. And we, all of those, the study out of Harvard, right? Like that longevity study that they've done, right? Like for 50 some years, they know that people, like at the end of the day, one of the biggest predictors of people's health is just that they had friendships. And so I would really encourage people to seek out their people, find your tribe. And whether it's, at the gym after your body has had a chance to heal, I will add, or, in a parenting group or at the park or taking classes, but, you just kind of need to find your people and build your support network like it's your job, like your life depends on it, because it kind of does.
It kind of does. Right. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your book that's out there. I'll include a link for you listeners to be able to check it out. Again, it's called Nurturing the Family, a Doula's Guide to Supporting New Parents. And again, Jackie, thank you for being here and thank you for sharing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, it's Dr. J again, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I, as a parent, learn a ton from these experts coming on and sharing their wisdom, so I hope you're getting a lot out of it too. And I want to share something else with you. I've created a guide called the 40 Ways to Connect with Your Baby During Pregnancy. It's full of simple things you can do on a day-to-day basis that will help strengthen that bond that you have with your baby. It's a free download. You can go to my website at drjwarren.com/40ways and just enter your email. I'll send it right to you. You can download it and start working on it right away. All of the research that I'm learning in the fields of epigenetics and attachment parenting is showing that the more bonded you are during your pregnancy with your baby, the better the birth is going to go and the better parenting is going to go, because you have that strong foundation, a strong connection to build upon. So go again to my website. It's drjwarren.com/40ways and get that free guide. And again, thanks for listening.